Job talks can be stressful, but they don't have to be. They can be successful, they can be engaging, they can be fun to give and fun to listen to. But how do you do that? Today, I'm going to give you 3 tips to help you stand out from the pack. And I'm going to tell you 3 different things that you can do that probably no one else is doing that's going to make you successful, memorable, and help you get the job that you want. So stay tuned. Hi everyone, I'm Leigh from teachingacademia.com, and I'm all about giving you the tools you need to navigate academia to make your best impact. If you're new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you get notifications because I put out new videos each week. So today we're going to be talking about 3 components to a successful job talk. And this video is going to be a little bit different, okay? Because it's not going to be the normal components of a successful job talk, all right? Normally, people tell you things like you have to be organized, you have to stick to the time frame that you were given, you have to clearly show things like how your research addresses a significant problem, how it builds on the literature, that it's high quality research, and you still want to do all of those things. But guess what? Lots of people know how to do those things. So if you want to break free from the pack, how do you do that? All right. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share with you today 3 things that I did that I actually had what I would consider to be a very harsh critic tell me it was the best job talk he ever saw. Okay. And this is somebody that I admire and respect very much. And so I'm going to tell you what these 3 things are. And I want you to keep in mind, as I'm telling you what these are, I still did all the other stuff that people tell you to do. I was still organized. I still stuck to the time frame that they gave me. I still showed, how my research contributed to the literature. I still showed that it was a high quality research project. I still gave my data. I still gave my findings. I still did a lot of the traditional stuff that people are always telling you that I've told you you need to do in a traditional job talk. But then I ramped it up a level, okay, by adding in these 3 things that we're going to talk about right now. So number 1, create a catchphrase, all right? A catchphrase is going to be something actionable yet memorable for your audience, right? Think about it. It's going to be short. It's going to be about 3 to 5 words in length. And think about this. Your audience can only retain so much information. What is it when they walk away that you want to have stuck in their heads, okay? So for me, for example, my catchphrase for this particular job talk was tell their stories. And I'll extend that example in a second. But it was tell their stories. And so what I did was very early on, I wove that in. Within the first 5 minutes, I wove that in, had that up on the screen, was saying it, right? So they're hearing it, they're seeing it, right? It's hitting some multiple modalities there. And then I kept repeating it periodically, all right? Not excessively, but just dropping it in here and there. Sometimes I might say it. Sometimes it just might be on the screen to remind them of the catchphrase. I certainly ended the talk with the catchphrase being visually presented as well as me verbally saying it, all right? And so the catchphrase is something that you want them to be thinking about, short, sweet, actionable item, all right? So the next thing is present them with an idea worth sharing, all right? So for this, you really want to think TED Talk here, okay? Now, TED Talks are 20 minutes. Sometimes they're shorter than that. You can have an hour. The time I did this, I had an hour and a half, which is way too long for a job talk. I wish job talks could be 20 minutes. But draw on some of the things that you can learn about giving a successful TED Talk and apply them here to a job talk, just knowing that your job talk has specific components it has to have, right? And it's going to be a lot longer than a TED Talk, but you can still utilize these strategies. And one of them is going to be presenting them with an idea worth sharing, okay? So again, when you think about this idea, you want to propose it as an action, right? An actionable item, something people need to do in response to a question or problem that you have, all right? So my example here is how will you tell the stories of others in ethical and equitable ways that help society? So what I did in this job talk was I thought of, as a researcher, we are telling the stories of other people, okay? And so that's where tell their stories comes from as the catchphrase. But then also that's where my question comes from. How will you tell the stories of others in ways that are ethical and equitable and are going to help society as a whole. That's what I want my audience thinking about. They may do research in any number of areas, right? Some of which might be in line with what I do. Others are going to be in their own separate fields, but they're still coming to my job talk because they're going to be working with me in some capacity, right? So when they leave, though, they can think about this in ways that are broader than just my little academic niche, right? They can be thinking about, well, when I share my research, be it through a conference presentation or a poster or a research paper or a video, whatever I do, how am I representing others? And is it ethical? Is it equitable? How am I helping society, right? How am I telling the stories of others? That catchphrase and that question resonates with people across disciplines. It doesn't matter if they're in my specialty area or not, right? So these are two things that now my audience can leave and have in their heads and be thinking about, and it can actually help and contribute potentially to their own work, right? So now it's not just about me, hey, come see my job talk, see if you think I'm a good researcher. It is still in part going to be about that, but now it's also about, hey, let's look at how I can fit in here and really we can work together and think about some substantive issues, all right? Now, number 3, all right, very much in line with a TED Talk, package your talk as a story, okay? Again, it is still a job talk. You still have to hit those certain things. You still are going to have a theoretical framework. You're still going to have to tell us about your data collection. You're still going to have to tell us about some stuff that is a little dry and maybe unstory-like, at least on the surface, but it doesn't have to be, okay? So for me, what I did here was I thought about what are the stories that we have about our participants? And I talked about this journey that I went on where I learned about how my research, my data, it's not neutral, and we know that. But when I started first sharing it as a beginning scholar, I tended to think of my data as here's my data, here's my findings, here's what I learned, here's how it helps other researchers, right? Here's how it helps us understand a problem. But what I did when I packaged my talk as a story is I shifted the way that I framed it. So now I'm talking about here's what I learned about what it means to share the stories of others through data. Here are the kinds of hard decisions, because you can't share every piece of data. You have to realize, I had to realize that as a researcher, I am telling stories about people with data. What do those stories look like? All right. And even though the participants are anonymous, and even though most of them don't know I'm off talking about them, right? I like to think about them being in the room, and this is the story that I am telling about you. Okay. What story do I want to hear? What would your reaction be? Okay. So that's how I framed my job talk, right? So I'm framing it about my journey as a researcher and how I gave this thought to what it means to use data to tell stories about others. Of course, the data is still contributing to the scholarly narrative. Of course, I'm still sharing my research questions and my data collection procedures and how I identified participants, but it's all framed around how I am telling stories, right? And that ties back into my catchphrase, tell their stories, and it ties back into the idea that I want people to leave thinking about, which is how are you telling the stories of others that you have in your research? How are you telling their stories? I don't care if it's one case study or 1,000 people or more large-scale quantitative study. What story are you telling? Is it ethical? Is it equitable? How is it helping society? If it's not, what do you need to do to change? All right, so those are 3 components that I think you're not going to hear a lot about. Creating a catchphrase, giving them an idea worth sharing, package your talk as a story, still keeping the components, obviously, that you need to keep. All right, so thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe so you can catch all my videos. And while you're at it, head down to the comments. Let's talk about job talks. Tell me what you think about these 3 ideas that I've given you for how to make your job talk really pop and stand out. Have you tried them? How did it go? What questions do you have? Let's share and discuss all of that so we can help one another as you move forward with your academic journey.